Hello RPG fans and welcome back to the kingdom. This is the next video in the series from a challenge run perspective where I review games that I've played and or done challenge runs of to determine if this game is challenge run worthy. For some challenge run examples, please check the description below for challenge runs that I have done. The categories that I'll be going over in this video include the platform that I am doing the review on, game difficulty settings, which includes actual game difficulty settings as well as the overall game's balance, game mechanics, which includes combat and non-combat, customization options, which includes menuing, variety of challenges, which includes types of challenge runs and boss fights / special encounters, and last but not least, replayability. And we will see if this game is challenge run approved. Reviewing Final Fantasy XII from a challenge runner's perspective. First review category is the platform. Now, while the Zodiac Age version of Final Fantasy XII was released on the PS4, Windows, Switch, and Xbox, there are several reiterations of the Final Fantasy XII in general that do cover additional platforms, but they are also different games. The Zodiac Age is what this review is going to be based off of, and of all 4 platforms that this game was released on over the years, all of the features, content, and endgame challenges are the same across all of those platforms. So starting off the bat with a +1 out of 10. Moving on to game difficulty options and actual game difficulty settings. This subcategory gets an automatic -1 as we are not presented with any easy, normal, or hard options when choosing new game. And with the game balance, this kind of really all depends on what your experience with the game is. If you are playing this game for the very first time, the game might seem a little bit hard because you're going to have to learn the gambit system. You're going to have to learn if you want to use magic attack or physical, if you want to prioritize a healer in your group, if you just want to go full out damage. The game balancing can seem a little overwhelming if you are new to the game. However, for challenge running, I think that the game balance does a very good job with this, because with challenge running, you're always going to be putting more restrictions and limitations onto what you can or can't do. And so that in itself is going to increase the difficulty, making the game balance seem a lot harder than what it probably would be if you were using a full party, for example. So in my opinion, I think the game balance is spot on, bringing us to 1 of 2 points obtained for game difficulty options. Next up is the pride and joy of this game and the game mechanics, the combat system. The combat system in Final Fantasy XII uses what is known as the gambit system. The gambit system is first introduced into Final Fantasy XII, and there are several reiterations of this throughout different games, but the gambit system is a list of preset commands where it acts like a if-then statement. If the criteria is met for this skill to be used on a selected target, then that line of the gambit system is used, and then it goes to the next line, and then the next and the next. For example, on the very first line, if you have a attack nearest enemy and that gambit is turned on, then that character will attack the nearest enemy. And it will always use the very first gambit as long as that statement is true. So if, for example, there is no enemies to attack and you have the second line gambit set to heal anyone under 90% HP with a potion, then that will be used next if there are no enemies to attack. It does follow from top to bottom until the statement is false, and then it will proceed on to the next line. So in the example that I just gave, even if a ally is below 90% HP and there's an enemy to attack, you will never get healed until that enemy is either dead or you are out of combat. And to add even further game mechanics for the combat, each character can have a certain class assigned to them as well. In the Zodiac Age, you can choose a second class and you can also choose what type of weapon each character has dependent on the class that they are given. So this does directly limit yourself as to what skills you can or cannot use in the Zodiac Age version of the game. The license point board as well is also minimized. It is very different from the original Final Fantasy XII release on the PS2 for the US. There's also different types of magic that you can use in combat, such as white magic, black magic, time magic. You could also use summons, but you would probably not want to use most of what I just mentioned from a challenge running perspective, but there's actually even more. But if you have not played the game, then I'll go ahead and leave that to you, as I feel like I could talk another 10 minutes about this particular section. But we gotta move on. Next up is the non-combat. There's quite a few shops that you can choose to use or not to use, depending on what you're trying to do for your challenge run. So there are armor shops, weapon shops, item shops, technic shops, and magic shops. There's also chests out on the map as well that you could choose to farm by going in and out of the zone. Now with the chests, the items in them are randomized from a set list. So you can try and farm a chest that has a 1% chance to drop something that you need, or you can try and farm a chest that has an 80% chance to drop something that you need. And you can just go in and out of the zone and just keep playing an RNG game with the chests. And with the vast amount of classes that you could choose for your characters, this as well gives you a vast variety of how you get to play the game, bringing us to 2 out of 2 points for this category. For customization options and menuing, we'll first take a look into the configuration options of the game. So as we can see here, there's several options that would affect the game's difficulty. The battle mode, changing that from wait to active would be recommended, as well as the battle speed, going from slow to fast. There's also another option which is completely optional, and that is the speed mode multiplier. Once this is enabled, it will do exactly what it says. It will change the game speed from normal to 2 times or 4 times. I do think that the best options for challenge running is to change the battle mode to active, battle speed fast, as well as speed mode multiplier set to 4 times, as this can make some boss fights extremely engaging, and you might not have enough reaction time to heal someone or res someone, or maybe counteract what the boss is doing with reflect, for example. I do think that this would be the preferred setup in my opinion. Further looking into the menu options, we do have the ability to have a maximum of 4 people in our party, or we can choose 3 people, 2 people, or a solo playthrough. Now you might not want to do a solo playthrough with anyone else but Vaughn, just because of the amount of time it takes to get each one of these additional characters. The equipment screen, just like it sounds, you can equip weapons, offhand, helm, armor, or accessories on every single character. So depending on what class or job you are, also determines what kind of weapons you can or cannot equip, which can also directly affect the challenges of random mobs or boss fights. With the license board, as mentioned earlier, it is a little bit different than the Final Fantasy XII released on the PS2 for the US. These boards are based on the types of jobs that you have in the Zodiac Age, so no character can actually learn everything. And so you could do a run to where you don't even use the LP board. That certainly is an option, and it definitely has been done. And then with the gambits for menuing, of course, this is where you can set your list of preset commands that your party members will follow. For me, this is just what I had throughout the entire playthrough. I didn't really have any utility whatsoever on anyone. I was manually controlling Vaughn for most of the playthrough, and he was acting as my healer. And so the menuing category gets a +2 from me. Moving on to the next category, variety of challenges, and I'm actually going to go over the boss fights and special encounters first for this category. The game is absolutely riddled with boss fights, which is a very good thing. And with special encounters, there's several dozen different types of optional hunts that you can go on, and at the end of those hunts is a optional boss. So this game has about 50 or so different types of bosses that you can fight, including the famous old boss to where everyone takes 4 to 12 hours to beat. So in terms of special encounters and boss fights, absolutely a +1. Now with the types of challenge runs from a viewer and runner's perspective, this one's a little bit weird for me. A viewer perspective, if you're looking up Final Fantasy XII challenge runs, then you're probably going to have a good time with the content that's out there. However, from a runner perspective, I tried to limit myself as much as possible on my playthrough, and with completing my challenge, trying to redo the game with another set of challenges doesn't really quite interest me, because if the game was already beatable when I limited myself as much as possible for the most part, then of course it's going to be beatable with literally anything else I try and do. So there's a old saying to where if half of the statement is false, then the entire statement is false. So for this category, it's only going to get 1 of 2 points from me. From a challenge run viewer and runner perspective, that's actually going to get 0 points from me. With reviewing the last category of replayability, I thought long and hard about this category, and I wanted to take away the point, but it doesn't really change the fact that with all the different types of classes that there are and weapons that you can choose from, gambits that you have access to, you have to give it the replayability point. But from my own personal experience with Final Fantasy XII, because I limited myself so hard on my playthrough and I still beat the game, my personal interest for this category would be to take away the point. But again, if I were to just not have so many limitations, then it might not be as fun of a replay for me. But in the grand scheme of things, encompassing everything that the game is, not what it could be, replayability is going to keep the point. And this brings us to a total of 8 out of 10, and Final Fantasy XII Zodiac Age is challenge run approved. Thank you all so much for taking the time out of your day to watch this video, and please let me know what you think of this video in the comments. I strive to do challenge runs that no one else has done for a game. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and leave a comment. Additionally, if you want to go above and beyond that, consider joining my Patreon or YouTube channel's membership with the join option next to my name below the video. And until then, I will catch you in the next review. Bye bye.